Hi, everyone, and welcome to our class, Intro to Human Nutrition. My name's Suzanne Elizondo. I'm a registered dietitian and your guide for the next 12 weeks. So here we are at our first lecture. I think this is a great question to start us off with, don't you think? Why learn about nutrition? I hope in this lecture and in the rest of our course, I can really make a case for why answering this question is so important. Nutrition information is really a necessity to ensure that we have quality and quantity of life and well-being. But let me ask you this other question. What have you been hearing in the news? Nutrition is always in the news, isn't it? I know this morning I was just reading a great article that came out on the Gut Biome Project and some new emerging research on probiotics. Last week it was all about the nutrition fact label and it's getting a makeover. And in weeks before that, oh my gosh, it's paleo, gluten-free, juicing, intermittent fasting, the benefits of bone broth, GMOs, is organic better for you? It's just, there's constantly so much going on with nutrition in the news. And I know with summer coming up, one of the things we're hearing a lot about in the news is weight and weight loss. And there's a reason for it. The obesity epidemic and our preoccupation with weight in America has really supported newscasters and fed news information. Obesity is a major concern in the United States, not just for adults, but for our children as well. We are fascinated with losing and gaining weight, and weight loss is a billion-dollar industry in the United States. Even one of the wealthiest women in the world struggles with her weight. Americans love their diets. Unfortunately, they're not working. They're not working out too well at all. So let's see why. We rely on many different types of assessments in nutrition to determine health status. I mean, how do we define a healthy weight? Well, there's lots of different criteria that we use, and we're going to learn about these assessments and this criteria throughout our course. When appropriate, though, we will use the body mass index as an assessment tool. We usually reference it by its lovely acronym BMI. The BMI is a measure of weight for height, and it is helpful to monitor weight status over time. Has your doctor ever talked to you about your BMI during an office visit? I want to say that BMI correlates with body fatness, but it is not a measurement of body composition. Let's just keep that in mind. We're going to learn all about BMI in a later unit. It has strengths and weaknesses as an assessment tool. It's not perfect for all populations. But for now, what I want you to know is that as BMI increases, weight increases, and so does risk for chronic disease. Let me say that again. As BMI increases, weight increases, and so does risk for chronic disease. I bet you've heard about chronic diseases such as heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and cancer. We're going to talk about these chronic diseases and how they relate to nutrition choices over a lifetime, as well as how they relate to obesity. Now, there are different categories of BMI. Each represents a discrete value. On our slide, we can see categories for BMI. A BMI of less than 18.5 is underweight. BMI of 18.5 to 24.9 is considered what? Normal. A BMI of 25 to 29.9 is what? Overweight. And a BMI of 30 and above is considered obese. We'll be talking about obesity in the next few slides. And now we know that it's a category represented by the BMI greater than 30. Now I want to also remind you that we need fat. We need enough fat, not too much though. And typically when we hear about BMI, we hear about the risk of having too high of a BMI. So we hear about the risk of being obese. But I also want to point out that there are dangers with having too low of a BMI. So having a BMI less than 18 has its own risks as well. So too high of a BMI, too low of a BMI brings about health risks. I want to, on this slide, introduce you to obesity trend data. And this data is from the Center for Disease Control's Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System, lovingly known as the BRFSS. Now listen to me a little bit first, and then I'm going to go through this slide in more detail. So the BRFSS is the world's largest ongoing telephone health survey system. It tracks health conditions and risk behaviors in the United States, and it's been doing it every year since 1984. Currently, data is collected in all 50 states. The BRFSS studies a great many things. You can learn so much about the BRFSS online. All you need to do is Google CDC/BRFFS, and you can spend days learning about it. It's fascinating. Now, one thing that's tracked through this phone survey is self-reported height and weight. So ring, ring, ring. Hi, this is the CDC. We're calling. We're conducting our annual BRFSS survey. And I'd love to ask you a couple of questions about your home. Do you mind? So I might ask you questions about fruit and vegetable consumption, activity, asthma, gun safety, seatbelt use, all different kinds of questions. And I might ask you, what's your height and what's your weight? Guess what you can calculate with height and weight? Exactly. You got it. BMI. Well, the CDC has studied the numbers that they've collected since 1990. In 1990, they started mapping self-reported height and weight calculated as BMI. Now this slide, let's turn to our slide. This is obesity trends among U.S. adults. We've got a couple of slides with this graphic. It's tracking adults with BMIs greater than 30. So remember, this is from their phone survey, adults self-reporting height and weight, calculating BMIs. This is tracking the number of adults that have self-reported a BMI of greater than 30, okay? And this was for the year 1990. So we can see all the states in the United States, and over to the left, we see our great state of California. And what we see is that in 1990, less than 10% of adults self-reported a BMI of greater than 30. Now, most of the states, between 10 to 14% of adults self-reported a BMI of greater than 30. And then you see 4 white states, okay? Just a little fun. Here's a geography quiz for you. These states that are in white were not participating in the BRFSS in 1990. So just so you know. But going back to what's going on here. So do you think the actual trend, let me ask you this question. So this is self-reported weight and height. Do you think this data is pretty similar to what's really going on? Do you think it's a little bit too much, a little too low? You know what it's like when people ask for your height and your weight. You you often will, add a couple inches, take off a couple of pounds. So just let you know there's some limitations in this BRFSS BMI data, okay? And the CDC is well aware for that. And if you go online, you can learn all about the way that they handle this data and all of the challenges and limitations. But, this trend might be a little low. It might be a little underestimating actually how many adults with BMI greater than 30 are out there because, people, want to look a little taller, look a little thinner, right? Okay. So 1990, are you ready? Let's move on. Here we are in 1995. Again, we're looking at obesity trends among U.S. adults. This is self-reported height and weight, calculated adults BMI that have greater than a BMI of 30. Whoa. Do we have a new percentage category? Let's look at this. So now in California, 10 to 14% of Californian adults self-report that they have a BMI that greater than 30. But look at, now we have a new category, 15 to 19% in many of those states. Here we are in 2000, 5 years later. What has happened with obesity rates 5 years later? Whoa, what's happening in California? Now, 15 to 19% of California adults are self-reporting that they have a BMI greater than 30. Also, do we have a new percentage category? Do you see that greater than 20, that new beige color? Yes. Some states are now reporting that 20% or more of their adult population have BMIs greater than 30, 1 out of 5. Here we are in 2005. What happened with obesity rates now 5 years later? Do we have a new category? I think we have 2 new percentage categories. Oh my gosh. Look, we have 25% to 29%, which is that auburn color. And then that maroon color is greater than 30%. Almost 1 out of 3 adults are self-reporting in 3 states in America BMI is greater than 30. And now in California, 20 to 24%. And then here we are in 2009. What has happened with obesity rates 5 years later? Do we have a new percentage category? No, we're still at 30, but that cluster is growing. We've really never had an epidemic like this and have been able to track it so thoroughly and so visually. And as I told you before, this is conservative based on limitations with self-reported height and weight. About 60 million adults, or 30% of the adult population, are now obese, which represents a doubling of the rate since 1980. It's something to pause about. Also, I want to let you know that new data that has captured the BRFSS trend data between 2009 and 2014, it should be out very soon. So looking forward to seeing what's happening with obesity trends in America for the last 5 years. So what are the contributing factors? Take a few minutes and just think about what you reviewed with the CDC data. Why do you think overweight and obesity are on the rise in America? Could it be fast food? Could it be less physical activity? Could it be larger portions? Portion distortion? Could it be unhealthy environments? Salty, sugary, and fatty foods everywhere? Could it be environments that don't support activity? I hope this sign makes you laugh. Could it be mixed messages? Could it be really inexpensive foods? Lots of food for a little amount of money? Whatever it is, these obesity trends are not going away. And, complex problem like obesity is going to require a complex solution. It's multifactorial. So anything you probably said that contributes to the obesity epidemic is probably correct. Here locally are some obesity trends among adults in the LA County area. Now, this data is from 97 to 2007, and it's still climbing with the data we're looking at for 2013. The LA County's adult population gained 51 million pounds in a 10-year cycle. So you see the red line is obesity trends, and you can see from 1997, 14.3%. Okay, of the adults in Los Angeles had a BMI greater than 30, and then in 2007 it jumped to 22.2. We are now at about 31%. So we're just going up and up and up. And I want to show you, do you see the yellow line? That is type 2 diabetes. And you can see that type 2 diabetes is increasing along with the trend of obesity. And do you see similarities with the Los Angeles data with the CDC data trends? Yes. We have a saying in public health that what's good for our waistline is good for our bottom line. And I want you to review this chart. And this is the economic cost of overweight, obesity, and physical inactivity among adults in LA County. And you have 2 columns. So you see overweight and obesity, the cost of billions, and physical activity, the cost in billions, in terms of healthcare and in terms of lost productivity. So what is the economic cost of overweight, obesity, and inactivity in Los Angeles County? It's 11, almost $12 billion. Obesity is not just a matter of personal health. It's also a costly public health concern that's affecting our economic productivity, our state budgets, and our personal and family well-being. That's why obesity is in the news, is because it affects so many different layers, from our families to our personals, to our communities, to our society. It's a multifactorial problem. And we're going to be looking at this in our unit folders. This is a slide that comes out of a report I posted in your unit materials. And it's cities and communities with the lowest and highest childhood obesity prevalence. So in LA County, we looked at the cities, the wealthiest cities in LA and the poorest cities in LA. And we compared childhood obesity prevalence. And what we got was startling. And we have a saying that says, what surrounds you shapes you. So if you look at this chart, we have two columns, and each column represents the 10 Los Angeles communities with the highest and lowest childhood obesity prevalence. So what we have is Manhattan Beach, which is one of the wealthiest cities in Los Angeles, with an obesity prevalence of 4.2. And you can see over on the left column, these are the top 10 wealthiest cities in LA, with the average youth obesity prevalence at 8%. In the right-hand column, these are the poorest, most economically disadvantaged cities, communities in Los Angeles County, okay? And the most disadvantaged city in LA is Maywood. And you can see the youth obesity prevalence in Maywood is what? 37.4%. So there's a paradox going on here. As income decreases, obesity increases. Again, let me say that. As there's an obesity paradox, as income decreases, obesity increases. And it'll be discussed in the report that I posted in your unit. So the average 10 highest obesity prevalence cities, okay, with an average 31.6%. Compare that to the wealthier cities. It's just amazing. And I want to share with you that in Los Angeles, Maywood, okay, is about 20 miles east of Manhattan Beach. So, really read the information I posted in the Unit 1 materials, and think about information and this information and plausible solutions. I mean, it's something to just really think about and understand why this is in the news. So that is the end of our lecture for our first unit. Just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what's happening in the news and how obesity has become such a epidemic and a prevalent conversation that we're having. So I hope you enjoy the unit materials. I am looking really forward to hearing your thoughts and your reactions, and just starting off on our quest to answer our question, why learn about nutrition? I'm glad you're here, and I'm looking forward to learning more about you and hearing your thoughts. So have a great week. Take care. Bye-bye.